For years, I'd cared for my unemployed husband. One day, he left his phone in the car. When I picked it up and powered it on, a voicemail began to play. And the instant I heard those 7 syllables, my face was drained of color. On an autumn afternoon, as gentle sunlight softly illuminated the kitchen, Valeria Montgomery was preparing warm tomato soup for her husband. The 45-year-old woman's hands moved with the graceful, efficient motions acquired through 15 years of marriage, carefully arranging the table setting. White linen tablecloth, silver spoons, and freshly baked bread. Everything was perfect. But today, something was different. When her 42-year-old husband Braden called her name Valeria, she sensitively detected a faint coldness mixed in his voice. Not his usual pet names of Val or a darling, but her full name. A distant tone, as if calling a stranger. It was a small change, but for a wife who had spent 15 years with him, it carried the weight of thunder. Braden had been home more often since being laid off from the securities company 3 years ago. Diagnosed with depression by a doctor, he had refused to work since then. Once an excellent salesman who drove luxury cars and wore designer suits, he now lay on the sofa in pajamas. Valeria supported their life with her savings from her former teaching career and her current income as a part-time tutor. Yes, what is it? She turned around with a smile, but Braden remained lying on the sofa, staring at his smartphone screen without answering. The screen showed message exchanges with someone, but when he noticed her gaze, he hastily hid it. The gesture was filled with guilt, like a husband hiding evidence of an affair. Nothing. I'm getting another headache, he said, sinking into the sofa with an exhausted expression. However, Valeria felt something was off. Despite complaining of a headache, he continued staring at the smartphone screen, and his expression looked more focused than pained. Left alone, Valeria felt an inexplicable anxiety, like a small thorn piercing her chest. It was the instinctive wariness that only couples who had been together for years could sense, detecting minute changes. Her observational skills as a former teacher were telling her that something was wrong. Around 3 p.m., the autumn sunlight beautifully illuminated the houseplants by the window. Valeria, following her habit as a former elementary school teacher, watered the plants at this time every day. Calathea, pothose, and peace lily. All were her green family members that she lovingly cared for. But today, even while performing this peaceful task, she felt a small storm brewing in her heart. Val, could you get my medication? Braden's voice came from the living room. He took antidepressants prescribed by his doctor daily, but lately, the dosage seemed to be increasing. When Valeria brought the medication, he swallowed it without a word of thanks. The gesture carried the coldness of performing an obligatory task. Thank you. I don't know what would have become of me without you. Those words should have been filled with love, but today they somehow sounded hollow. Like reading from a script, without emotion. A world apart from the passionate proposal 15 years ago when they married. I'm really grateful you're by my side. The words that followed also failed to resonate. Braden's eyes seemed to look at her but not really see her. As if he were gazing at something beyond her. As twilight painted the windows amber, his mother Cordelia Montgomery arrived unannounced. The elegant 68-year-old woman was dressed in her usual perfectly set silver hair and expensive Chanel suit. Her entrance was always glamorous, with the presence of an actress appearing from stage. A former bank branch manager, she maintained her upper-class lifestyle even after retirement, her dignity never diminishing. Good afternoon, Valeria. Cordelia's greeting was also more formal than usual. Instead of her usual, hello dear, there was a faint coldness in her eyes as she looked at her daughter-in-law. Without meeting Valeria's eyes, she headed directly to her son. Her footsteps created a regular rhythm of expensive leather shoes clicking against the tiles. Braden, how are you feeling? It's still difficult, Mother. But I might be getting a little better. The two seemed to be discussing something in the living room. Occasionally, Cordelia's sharp laughter could be heard. It was different from the social laughter she displayed at parties. It had a conspiratorial ring to it. The intimate atmosphere between mother and son contained a coldness that excluded Valeria. When Valeria approached while preparing dinner, the conversation stopped abruptly, and Cordelia hastily changed the subject. "Oh, Valeria. What's for dinner tonight?" "I'm planning roast chicken." "Wonderful. It's Braden's favorite." But the conversation felt unnatural. An atmosphere as if her presence was unwelcome pervaded. Cordelia's gaze seemed to look at Valeria while actually looking through her. They must be discussing Braden's treatment, Valeria told herself, but deep down, she feared another possibility. A secret conversation between mother and son. Things she wasn't meant to hear. Unconsciously, she found herself gripping the kitchen counter tightly. While preparing dinner, Valeria strained to listen to their conversation. The fragmentary words she caught were plan, timing, and ready to go, all of which filled her with anxiety. "It's progressing smoothly," Cordelia's voice echoed quietly. "Just a little more patience." Braden's response was equally low, and Valeria couldn't make out the content. However, there was definitely an atmosphere in their tone suggesting they were hiding something. That night, Valeria lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The breathing of Braden sleeping beside her seemed shallower than usual. His smartphone was glowing on the nightstand. Though the ringer was set to silent, only the screen kept flashing pale blue. That light seemed to be warning her of something. Even past 2 a.m., Valeria couldn't fall asleep. Braden appeared to be in deep sleep, but the words he occasionally muttered when turning over concerned her. "The plan is going smoothly. Soon, freedom." Was it sleep talk, or was he conversing with someone in his dreams? Valeria's anxiety deepened further. The suspicion that these fragmentary words might be connected to the daytime conversation with Cordelia was eating away at her heart. The next morning, when Valeria woke up, Braden was already awake. He sat on the sofa, once again facing his smartphone. The screen's light cast a pale blue glow on his face, and his expression wasn't that of the gentle husband she knew. It was cold and calculating, like a completely different person. "Good morning, Braden." "Oh, good morning." The reply was short and curt. And he closed his smartphone before she could approach. There was obvious guilt in that gesture. While preparing breakfast, Valeria watched her husband's back. Recently, she couldn't see the despair and helplessness that had been there before. Was it a sign of recovery, or something else entirely? "You seem to be feeling better today." "Do I? I'm still struggling." But there was energy in his voice. An unnatural weakness, as if he were acting. That question would plant new seeds of anxiety in her heart. And she didn't yet know that the discovery that would occur that evening would completely overturn her life from its very foundation. On Tuesday morning, with the cold autumn wind stinging her cheeks, Valeria was preparing special oatmeal for her husband. Managing Braden's nutrition was a perfect job for her meticulous nature as a former teacher. Warm oatmeal with banana and honey, fresh orange juice, and vitamin supplements recommended by the doctor. Everything was a calculated menu for his health recovery. But this morning, he said he felt unwell and didn't eat his meal. "Are you okay? Do you have a fever?" When she tried to worriedly place her hand on his forehead, Braden slightly pulled away. That reaction was as if he disliked her touch. "I'm just a little dizzy. I'll rest while you're out shopping." Despite feeling anxious, Valeria headed to the nearby supermarket as usual. To buy fresh vegetables and protein bars that Braden liked. Their finances were tight, and she shopped while looking for sale items to save every cent. The life where they could once buy luxury ingredients without worry was but a distant memory. After paying at the register and walking through the parking lot with heavy shopping bags in both hands, her neighbor Mrs. Hunter called out to her. "Valeria, your husband looked so energetic exercising in the yard this morning." At those words, Valeria's hands trembled. The canned goods inside the shopping bags rattled noisily. Exercising? She nearly dropped her shopping bags. Mrs. Hunter was a kind 72-year-old woman, known in the neighborhood as an honest person. She wasn't someone who would lie. Yes, very actively. It looked like he could be going to a gym, doing push-ups, or something similar. His depression must be much better now. Valeria's heart began pounding violently. She hadn't seen Braden exercise in 3 years. Moreover, the doctor had advised him to avoid vigorous exercise. Considering his mental state, such active activities weren't recommended. I see. Maybe he's gradually getting better. While maintaining a smile on the surface, Valeria hurried home. Inside her heart, inexplicable anxiety was swirling. Even while driving, Mrs. Hunter's words kept repeating in her head. When she arrived home, she found Braden lying on the sofa looking distressed. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breathing appeared shallow. When he saw her, he gave a weak smile. "Val, I was so lonely while you were gone. When I'm alone, I get anxious." The usual pet name had returned. However, that gentleness now felt like acting. Because what Mrs. Hunter had seen 30 minutes earlier wasn't a man suffering from illness, but a man exercising healthily. This discrepancy was far too great. "Thank you for shopping. I can't do anything without you." Braden's voice trembled, but Valeria could no longer judge whether that trembling was genuine or fake. Around 1 p.m., while Valeria was preparing lunch, the doorbell rang. Cordelia was visiting again. This time she had brought a large leather briefcase. Inside were bundles of documents, and envelopes with law firm logos were visible. "Valeria, these are important documents for our family. Could you please sign them?" Cordelia's voice was elegant as always, but gave the impression of being somewhat rushed. Usually she would first ask for tea and start with small talk, but today she got straight to business. "What kind of documents are these?" When Valeria asked, Cordelia's expression hardened for an instant. It was a minute change, but unmistakable. A reaction as if she were confused by an unexpected question. "Life insurance renewal. For Braden's medical expenses, you're also listed as a beneficiary. It's a very favorable arrangement," Cordelia explained while spreading out the documents, but tension was visible in her movements. Normally, for insurance renewals, an insurance company representative would come, so why was her mother-in-law bringing them? However, when Valeria tried to read the document contents in detail, Braden suddenly claimed he was feeling unwell. His face had indeed turned pale, but the timing was far too convenient. It seemed like theater designed to distract her attention. "Oh, Braden. Are you all right?" Cordelia hastily put away the documents. The movement was swift, as if destroying evidence. "Let's do this another time. His health comes first." Then the two began talking in low voices. The volume was inaudible to Valeria, but occasionally she caught words like plan, timing, and preparation. All words that filled her with anxiety. The appointment with the doctor. "No problem, everything's arranged." "She hasn't noticed." "Not at all." "Doesn't suspect a thing." The fragmentary conversation content planted deep suspicion in Valeria's heart. What exactly were they planning? And did she refer to her? Left alone, Valeria stood in the kitchen. She felt anxiety beginning to transform into certainty in her chest. The secret between her husband and mother-in-law. Plans she alone wasn't told about. Everything seemed like an invisible conspiracy surrounding her. In the evening, Valeria went to the backyard to bring in the laundry. The autumn sunset slanted low, creating long shadows. From there she could see the driveway, and Braden's blue sedan caught her eye. Something about the car bothered her, and when she placed her hand on the hood, it was still slightly warm. Despite him saying he hadn't stepped outside all day. It takes at least an hour for an engine to cool completely. This meant he had been driving the car until around 4 p.m. Where did he go? In Valeria's heart, suspicion was beginning to turn into certainty. And when she peered through the car window, she could see something placed on the passenger seat. Braden's smartphone. He seemed to have forgotten it when getting out of the car. Valeria placed her hand on the car door handle. In 15 years of marriage, she had never looked at her husband's belongings without permission. It was an expression of trust and respect for him. But now the situation was different. Too many suspicious events had overlapped. It would be troublesome if the battery died, she told herself as she opened the door. But truthfully, her desire to clear up yesterday's suspicions was stronger. Sitting inside the car, Valeria picked up the smartphone. It stared at her with its black screen. For some reason, she pressed the power button. When the screen lit up, it requested a password. She tried entering her husband's birthday. With a beep sound, the lock was released. The screen showed 5 unread voice messages. All from the sender labeled Mother. From Cordelia. The latest message was received at 2 p.m. today. Precisely when Valeria was out shopping. She had no way of knowing then that this smartphone would soon completely overturn her life from its foundation. That night, when dinner time came, Braden said he had no appetite. He wouldn't take even one bite of the roast chicken that Valeria had lovingly prepared. Sorry, Val. My stomach's not feeling well. However, while Valeria was washing dishes, she heard the sound of him secretly opening the refrigerator and eating something. When she turned around, he hastily returned to the sofa and put on a weak expression again. Braden, did you eat something? No, nothing. I just drank some water. But a cookie wrapper had been thrown away in the sink. It was the packaging from the expensive chocolate cookies she had bought. Valeria said nothing, but felt her trust in her husband beginning to crumble bit by bit. The accumulation of small lies. Inexplicable behavior. Everything deepened her suspicions. And she couldn't get the unread messages on the smartphone she'd seen in the car out of her head. Tomorrow, she would definitely listen to those voice messages. That resolve solidified in her heart. On Wednesday night, after finishing the dinner cleanup, Valeria watched her husband relaxing in the living room. Braden lay on the sofa, looking at his smartphone as usual. His expression looked more like he was concentrating on something rather than suffering from illness. I'm going to take a shower, Braden said as he stood up, leaving his smartphone on the coffee table as he headed to the bathroom. Usually he always took his smartphone with him, but today he unusually left it behind. While washing dishes, Valeria kept glancing at the smartphone on the table. The suspicions from yesterday, Mrs. Hunter's testimony, the suspicious conversation with Cordelia, and the warm car hood. Everything weighed heavily on her heart. The sound of the shower could be heard from the bathroom. Valeria dried her hands and returned to the living room. The smartphone was right in front of her. In 15 years of marriage, she had never looked at her husband's belongings without permission. It was an expression of trust and respect for him. But now the situation was different. Too many suspicious events had overlapped. She entered her husband's birthday. With a beep, the lock was released. The screen showed 5 unread voice messages. All from Cordelia. The shower sound could still be heard from the bathroom. When she pressed play on the first message, Cordelia's voice began flowing in a tone completely different from her usual elegant and warm manner, cold and calculated. Brayden, the first phase is proceeding smoothly. Valeria suspects nothing. That woman is truly simple. To think she's known nothing for 15 years. Valeria's blood froze. Knew nothing? For 15 years? The air in the living room suddenly felt thin, and she felt breathless. The meeting with Dr. Kingsley is complete, and the documents are ready. The medication we're giving her seems to be taking effect. Her memory has been getting fuzzy lately, hasn't it? She should be forgetting things and getting confused sometimes. Valeria's hands began trembling violently. Indeed, her memory had been getting fuzzy more often lately. Forgetting where she put her keys, getting confused about appointment times. She had thought it was due to age or stress. The second message played automatically. That woman's life insurance payout is $500,000. With that, we can start a new life. We can buy the villa in Florida, and you can reclaim your true self, Brayden, free from living a mundane life with her. Cordelia's voice echoing in the living room was like the devil's whisper. The amount of $500,000 was being discussed as the value of her life. Valeria shuddered at the cruelty. I feel sorry for that woman, but this is a necessary sacrifice. She's simply not of the same caliber as people like us. Different breed, you see. The third message confessed even more terrifying content. Tomorrow, let's finish everything. Take her to the hospital to see Dr. Kingsley. Then everything will be over. Increase the medication to the maximum dose and worsen her symptoms a bit more. No one will suspect. It's a perfect plan. Valeria's breathing became shallow, and symptoms of hyperventilation began to appear. Tomorrow? Everything would be finished tomorrow? That meant the next day was supposed to be her last day. The shower sound from the bathroom stopped. Valeria hurriedly played the fourth message. In Valeria's medication, in addition to the regular anti-anxiety drugs, we're mixing components that make memory fuzzy and substances that strain the heart. She thinks she's getting sick, but actually we're making her sick. How ironic. That woman drinks her medicine every day without knowing she's being poisoned. Valeria covered her mouth with her hand, suppressing the urge to vomit. Poison? She had been made to drink poison every day. The medicine her beloved husband handed her was actually poison meant to kill her. The last message was the most cruel. I plan to administer the final medication at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Tonight or tomorrow morning, she'll die of a heart attack. And we'll receive the insurance money as the grieving family. You're ready for the acting, aren't you, Brayden? Play the sad husband who lost his beloved wife. The sound of the bathroom door opening could be heard. Valeria quickly returned the smartphone to its original place and rushed back to the kitchen. Her heart was pounding violently, and her breathing was erratic. All the messages were swirling in her head. They are trying to kill me. She almost said it aloud and hastily covered her mouth. That terrifying truth appeared before her as reality. All the poor health she'd been feeling, the fuzzy memory, everything could finally be explained. Brayden came out of the bathroom. Drying his hair with a towel, he returned to the living room. I feel good. Maybe it's thanks to the shower. He picked up his smartphone and checked the screen. Valeria stood at the sink, unable to stop trembling. Val, are you okay? You look pale. Brayden called out with apparent concern, but now that she knew all his kindness was fake, it sounded like acting to her. I'm just a little tired, Valeria managed to answer, but her voice was shaking. Had their entire marriage been a lie? Was Brayden's affection and Cordelia's kindness all an act? And the most terrifying thing was that their plan would be executed tonight. Having been given the final medication at 2 p.m. today meant she was supposed to die in just a few hours. Let's go to bed early tonight. You look tired too. Valeria felt terror at Braden's suggestion. If she went to sleep, she might never wake up again. But she had to continue acting. She couldn't let them suspect. Yes, let's rest early tonight, Valeria answered while forcing a smile. But beneath that smile, preparations for the most important battle of her 15 years were beginning. She had no time. She had to do something before they finished their entire plan. But whom could she trust? The police? But if Dr. Kingsley had been bought off, there might be other accomplices. Then she remembered her best friend Juliet. Having experienced divorce and skilled at seeing through men's lies, she would surely help. Before heading to the bedroom, Valeria quietly took out her cell phone and sent a message to Juliet. I want to talk tonight. About something very important. Please help me. The moment she pressed send, her counterattack began. Valeria walked to the bedroom on trembling legs. Braden was already lying in bed, making his usual weak expression. But now she could clearly see through that performance. I'm really tired tonight. Thanks to you, I feel a little better, Braden said in a gentle voice, but Valeria understood the terrifying meaning behind those words. I'm tired too. Let's rest early, Valeria answered while pretending to be calm. But her heart was pounding violently, and her palms were wet with cold sweat. When they got into bed, Braden seemed to fall asleep immediately. But Valeria could tell he was acting. The rhythm of his breathing, the tension in his body, everything was unnatural. Even past 2 a.m., Valeria couldn't sleep. No reply had come from Juliet either. She was probably busy with her night shift. Valeria had to face this terrifying reality alone. Around 3 a.m., Braden got up with a small sound. He walked carefully to avoid making footsteps and headed to the living room. Valeria listened with her eyes closed, holding her breath. A small phone sound could be heard. Mom, everything's as planned. Braden's voice came through small but clear. The medication seems to be working. She hasn't noticed anything yet. We need to finish this quickly. Hearing that conversation, Valeria was certain. They really were trying to kill her. When the phone call ended, Braden returned to bed. He began pretending to sleep again, but Valeria could see through that performance. The next morning, when Valeria woke up, Braden was already up and in the kitchen. He was preparing breakfast for her, but it probably included that medication. Good morning, Val. Did you sleep well last night? Yes, I slept very well, Valeria lied with a smile. I'm thinking of taking you to the hospital today. I'm worried about your recent poor health. At Braden's suggestion, Valeria's blood froze. This was how they would finish everything. They planned to take her to Dr. Kingsley and kill her there. The hospital? But I don't think I'm that unwell. No, just as a precaution. Your health is most important. Braden's words sounded loving, but to Valeria they rang like a death sentence. I see. Then let's get ready. Valeria pretended to agree. Just then, the doorbell rang. Good morning, Braden, Valeria. Cordelia appeared. She was perfectly dressed as usual, but seemed somehow excited that day. As if a day she had long awaited had finally arrived. Mom, good morning. We're planning to go to the hospital today. Yes, it's a very important day. Cordelia's eyes flashed for a moment. When the three sat in the living room, Cordelia took out documents. Valeria, these are the continuation of the documents from the other day. Could you please sign before going to the hospital? Valeria looked at the documents. They were life insurance beneficiary change forms. Documents to change the payout after her death to go to Brayden and Cordelia. This is just a formality. Don't worry, Cordelia urged. At that moment, something definitively changed within Valeria. She no longer needed to continue acting. Now that she knew the truth, she had a choice. Be killed silently, or fight. Brayden. Her voice carried a coldness never heard before. It was the moment when the strength she had sealed away for 15 years finally surfaced. What is it? Brayden made a worried expression, but that performance no longer worked on her. Last night, I looked at your smartphone. In that instant, a silence as if time had stopped dominated the room. Brayden's expression changed instantly, and Cordelia stared at Valeria with sharp eyes. What did you see? Brayden's voice lowered. Voice messages from Cordelia. The talk about the $500,000 insurance money, the conspiracy with Dr. Kingsley, the poison being given to me, I heard everything. Valeria's voice trembled, but was filled with certainty. In that moment, Brayden's mask completely fell away. The weak patient's expression disappeared, revealing the face of a cold, calculating man. He stood up from the sofa. The movement was smooth, without any difficulty. How much did you hear? As if he no longer needed to act, his voice returned to its naturally cold tone. Everything. That your illness is an act 2, that you've been deceiving me for 3 years. Valeria's voice had regained a strength not heard in years. Cordelia also stood up. She too had abandoned her mask of the refined mother-in-law. If you've realized it, then it can't be helped. Cordelia's voice carried cruel satisfaction. What a shame. I thought we could finish this more peacefully. But now we don't need to act anymore. Why? Valeria asked through tears. What did I do? You did nothing. Cordelia shrugged. You were just in the way. Brayden deserves a better life. Not this existence with an ordinary teacher like you. You wouldn't understand. Brayden continued. The pain of people of our bloodline having to live down to your level. As Valeria listened to their words, she realized how blind she had been. But alongside the sadness, fierce anger was burning within her. What do you think I've sacrificed for you both these 15 years? For the first time, anger filled Valeria's voice. I quit teaching to take care of you. Time with friends, my own dreams, I gave up everything. That's what you chose to do. Brayden said coldly. No one asked you to. In that moment, something definitively changed within Valeria. The anger she had suppressed for years finally surfaced. Enough. She stood up. The trembling stopped, replaced by firm resolve supporting her. I am no longer your victim. Just then, Valeria's cell phone rang. A reply from Juliet. I'm coming now. Don't act alone no matter what. Reading the message, Valeria felt a ray of hope. She was not alone. You're not going anywhere. Brayden said threateningly. Now that you know our plan, we can't let you live. But Valeria was no longer afraid. Now that she knew the truth, she had the strength to fight. You're the ones who can't escape anywhere. Valeria answered resolutely. I recorded all the evidence. I've already contacted the police. It was a lie, but their expressions showed disturbance. You understand nothing. Cordelia said with anger. Who do you think we are? But then the doorbell rang violently. Juliet seemed to have arrived. Valeria ran toward the door. The most important battle of her 15 years had finally begun. The moment Valeria ran toward the entrance, Brayden grabbed her arm. The strength in his hand was powerful, not that of a sick man. For 3 years, she had been caring for a husband with a non-existent illness. Where do you think you're going? Brayden's voice was no longer that of a gentle husband. It was cold and domineering, the voice of a completely different person. I'm getting away from you. I'll never be deceived again. Valeria desperately tried to shake off his arm. But Braden's strength was greater than expected, and he tried to pull her back. You're a woman who can't do anything without me. Who would love an ordinary middle-aged woman like you? Those cruel words were the culmination of psychological violence that had been eroding her self-esteem for 15 years. But now, those words no longer affected her. Even so, it's better than being with you. Valeria answered resolutely. In that moment, something definitively changed within her. She had reclaimed herself not as a submissive wife, but as a strong woman. The doorbell rang violently again. Val. Are you okay? I know you're inside. Juliet's voice could be heard through the door. Strong and reliable. Cordelia stood up and approached Valeria. Valeria, calm down. We don't intend to hurt anyone. We just want to start a new life. By killing me. Valeria's voice trembled but was filled with anger. You've been using my love and deceiving me for 15 years. And now you're trying to take my life too. Then the knocking on the front door became more violent. I called the police. They'll be here soon. At Juliet's voice, both Braden and Cordelia's faces went pale. She's lying. Braden said, shaken. No, it's true. Valeria lied. I recorded all your conversations and voice messages and sent them. At that moment, Cordelia suddenly changed her attitude. Valeria, it's a misunderstanding. We were just... A misunderstanding? Valeria shook her head violently. Poisoning me is a misunderstanding? The talk about $500,000 insurance money is a misunderstanding? The front door shook violently. Juliet seemed to be hitting the door with something. Open the door. I know Valeria's in danger. Braden hurriedly looked out the window. Someone might be coming. What do we do? Let's change the plan. Cordelia said calmly. Make it look like an accident. Say she fell down the stairs. Hearing that conversation, Valeria felt terror. They really intended to kill her. Right now. Help me. Valeria screamed loudly. In that instant, the front door burst open forcefully. Juliet had burst in. Val. The 44-year-old nurse understood the situation instantly. Valeria's tears, Braden standing, Cordelia's cold expression. You're walking around perfectly fine. Juliet pointed at Braden. I heard you were bedridden with depression, but here you are moving around so energetically. It was all a lie, wasn't it? It's none of your business. Braden said threateningly. It's very much my business. Juliet took out her cell phone. I'm Valeria's best friend. And as a nurse, I had doubts about your illness. They're trying to kill me. Valeria said with a trembling voice. They plan to poison me and collect the insurance money. Juliet's expression became stern. I'm calling the police right now. When she tried to make the call, Braden charged at her. However, Juliet had learned self-defense during her divorce. Don't touch me. Juliet quickly dodged and simultaneously called the police on her cell phone. What are you doing? Cordelia panicked. Calling the police. Juliet answered calmly. Your crimes won't be tolerated. Then, real siren sounds could be heard. Neighbors had also noticed the commotion and called the authorities. Braden and Cordelia raised their hands as if giving up. However, Cordelia maintained her arrogant attitude until the end. That woman understands nothing. We were merely asserting our legitimate rights. Legitimate rights? Detective Bernardo, who had arrived, asked. Is killing someone a legitimate right? The voice messages Valeria had heard and the testimony at the scene became decisive evidence. Detective Bernardo's investigation revealed the full scope of the case. Investigation over the following days uncovered even more horrifying facts. Dr. Kingsley was also involved in the case, but he was a victim too. "I was being threatened," Dr. Kingsley testified to police with trembling. "Cordelia threatened to kill my family. I have a wife and young daughter. I couldn't refuse." The investigation revealed that Cordelia had been monitoring Dr. Kingsley's family and had for a long time threatened to harm them if he didn't comply. In fact, when his child had a minor accident with a car, the doctor was overwhelmed with fear and forced to prescribe harmful drugs to Valeria. "Every day was hell," Dr. Kingsley continued through tears. "I couldn't forgive myself for doing things that went against medical ethics. But with my family's lives in danger, I had no choice but to comply." The insurance fraud scheme by Cordelia and Braden was more malicious than imagined. They had threatened the doctor to falsify Valeria's health condition, administer poison, and ultimately have her die of a heart failure at the hospital, collecting $500,000 in insurance money, a perfect plan. At the trial, the voice message evidence and Dr. Kingsley's testimony were decisive. Dr. Kingsley, considering the threatening circumstances and his cooperative testimony, received a reduced sentence of 3 years in prison. His medical license was permanently revoked, but for safety, he relocated to another state with his family. Ultimately, Braden received a life sentence with possibility of parole, and Cordelia received 30 years in prison. Valeria gave her final testimony. "For 15 years, I misunderstood the meaning of love. True love is not about controlling someone. It's about respecting each other and granting each other freedom." Her words resonated with many women in the gallery. Ladies, if you're currently in a relationship where you're only giving one-sidedly, please reconsider whether that's truly love. You have the right to be happier. She also addressed Dr. Kingsley. "Dr. Kingsley, you were also a victim. I don't blame you for succumbing to threats. I understand your desire to protect your family." On the day of sentencing, Valeria left the courtroom with Juliet. Their friendship had deepened even further through this ordeal. "You're a strong woman," Juliet said. "You saw through 15 years of lies and reclaimed your life. If you hadn't been there, I really would have been killed." Valeria answered with gratitude. "That's what friends are for." Juliet smiled. That night, Valeria prepared dinner for one in her small apartment. It was simple, but a meal that truly brought peace to her heart. She no longer needed to worry about poison. Her new life had finally begun. Justice had prevailed, truth had been revealed. And most importantly, she had reclaimed herself. 6 months later. On a spring morning, warm sunlight illuminated the kitchen of the small apartment. Valeria Montgomery gazed at the blossoming trees outside the window while brewing coffee for one. The exhausted expression was no longer on the 45-year-old's face. Instead, quiet strength and inner peace resided there. On the kitchen counter lay an employment notice from the local elementary school. Starting next month, she would work as a teacher again. After 15 years, she had reclaimed her dream. A new beginning. Valeria murmured quietly. Holding her coffee cup with both hands and feeling its warmth, she reflected on the events of the past 6 months. After the trial ended, she received support from many people. When the case was reported, responses began pouring in from women in similar circumstances. Women suffering from psychological violence at home, women controlled economically, women whose freedom was taken away in the name of love. Subsequently, Valeria began receiving requests for contributions from women's magazines and local newspapers. Under the title New Morning, she continued writing about the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships through her own experience. It was both healing for herself and a gift to others. According to her editor, reader response was significant. I was encouraged by your courage. I've decided to speak up too. Being deceived for 15 years, it's exactly like my situation. Hearing such words from readers, Valeria realized her experience had not been in vain. Her pain and suffering had become a light of hope for other women. By the window, small flowers she had newly planted were blooming. Gerberas, marigolds, and sunflower seedlings. All bright-colored flowers, as if symbolizing her new life. Ms. Valeria. The mail carrier's voice made her turn around. Today several letters had arrived. Among them were new contribution requests from publishers and speaking invitations from women's support organizations. Among the letters was something special. It was a letter from Dr. Kingsley. Dear Miss Valeria, 6 months have passed since that incident, and I am living quietly with my family in a new place. Having lost my medical license, I now participate in community volunteer activities, trying to contribute to society in my small way. I will never forget the words you directed at me in court. When you said you were also a victim, I felt for the first time a slight release from the guilt I had carried for so long. Of course, what I did is unforgivable. But your kindness gave me the opportunity to reclaim my humanity. My daughter is now happily attending the local elementary school. Every time I see her smile, I think that without your courage, our peaceful days would not exist. With heartfelt gratitude, Trevor Kingsley. After reading the letter, Valeria gently held it to her chest. Knowing that Dr. Kingsley was also walking a new path in life warmed her heart. In the afternoon, Juliet came to visit. The 44-year-old best friend appeared with her usual bright smile. Val, you look great. Your complexion has improved so much. Thank you. I still can't believe how peaceful each day is. The two sat in the living room, drinking tea and sharing recent updates. While continuing her nursing work, Juliet happily talked about having a new boyfriend recently. I'll introduce you sometime. He's a very kind person. But given our experiences, I'm proceeding carefully. That's best. Taking time to truly understand what kind of person they are is important. Valeria's words carried weight based on deep experience. What about you? Any new encounters? At Juliet's question, Valeria smiled. Right now I'm focusing on reclaiming myself. After living for 45 years, I feel like I'm truly facing my real self for the first time. In the evening, after Juliet left, Valeria went for a walk alone. In the neighborhood park, families were enjoying themselves happily. Listening to the children's laughter, she thought about the new job starting next month. Teacher, what kind of person will the new teacher be? The children were probably talking like that. Valeria wanted to teach the children not only academics, but also the importance of trusting people and simultaneously the importance of protecting oneself. Sitting on a park bench and watching the sunset, Valeria quietly reflected. The 15 years of marriage had indeed been filled with lies. But it was also true that those experiences had strengthened her and created who she was now. Maybe everything had meaning. She thought. Without that terrifying experience, she wouldn't be who she was today. The desire to help women suffering the same pain wouldn't have been born either. When she returned home, an email from her editor had arrived. It contained news that many grateful voices from readers who had read her contributed articles were being sent to the publisher. Reading your article gave me courage. I've decided to take a new step forward. I cried reading your 15-year experience, relating it to my own situation. Thanks to you, I found an opportunity to reconsider my relationship with my husband. Valeria's eyes welled up as she looked at the screen. Her experience was encouraging many women. That night, before getting into bed, Valeria wrote in her diary. It was a habit she had continued since the incident. Today I made another new discovery. People can change at any age. Love is not about controlling someone, but about respecting each other and granting each other freedom. And above all, I finally understand that it begins with loving oneself. Tomorrow is a new day. There's still so much to learn. But I'm no longer afraid. Because I'm not alone. Outside the window, the night breeze was scattering flower petals. The falling petals seemed to bid farewell to the past. And at the same time, they seemed to promise the arrival of a new season. Valeria closed the window and turned off the lights. Tonight she could sleep peacefully without worrying about poison. Good night, yesterday's me. She whispered softly. Good morning, tomorrow's me. And she quietly closed her eyes. Her new story had only just begun. She would share with many people the wonder of loving, believing, and above all, living authentically. By the apartment window, small flowers illuminated by moonlight quietly awaited tomorrow's sun.